I had always prided myself on being loyal. It was the foundation of everything I believed in: love, trust, commitment. I never thought I would be one of those people, those who betrayed their partner for a fleeting moment of excitement or passion. My relationship was strong, built on years of mutual respect, understanding, and love. We had everything: a steady rhythm of life that worked for us both. We laughed together, faced challenges side by side, and supported each other through the ups and downs. Her name was Sarah, and she was the perfect partner. We met in college, and from the first moment, I knew there was something special about her. She had this warmth about her that made everyone feel welcome. She listened when I spoke, really listened. She had this quiet, unwavering confidence, and I admired it deeply. We were a team, inseparable and content. I couldn't imagine my life without her. It wasn't just the big moments that made our relationship work. It was the quiet, everyday ones, the late-night talks, the way she smiled when I surprised her with something small but thoughtful, like a handwritten note or her favorite snack. We built a life together. Our home was peaceful, our connection solid. I trusted her with everything: my heart, my vulnerabilities, and my dreams. I couldn't have asked for more. Or so I thought. I had always known the kind of person I was, the kind of partner I wanted to be. I'd seen what infidelity could do to people. Growing up, I had witnessed my parents' marriage crumble because of a betrayal that shattered everything they had built. My mother was never the same after my father's affair. I swore I would never put anyone through that. I was committed, or so I thought. Yet, even with all my determination, something unexpected began to creep into my life. It started innocently enough: a glance here, a smile there. It was a coworker, someone I had known for a while. His name was Jake. He was charming, confident, and always seemed to know the right thing to say. We worked in the same department, and while I had always seen him as just another colleague, recently I had started to notice things. The way he laughed a little too hard at my jokes, the way he'd lean in just a bit when we talked. It was subtle at first, and I dismissed it as nothing more than casual, friendly behavior. But then, it wasn't just the occasional smile. It was the late-night work emails that always seemed to include a comment about how he looked forward to seeing me tomorrow, or how great it was working together. I tried to brush it off. It didn't mean anything, right? He was just friendly, just polite. Yet, as time went on, I found myself drawn to him. Not in a way that made me think I was ready to leave Sarah, but in a way that made me question my own resolve. I hadn't told Sarah about Jake, and I didn't intend to. There was no need. I convinced myself that nothing was happening between us, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was harmless, just casual interactions that had no deeper meaning. But why was it starting to feel different? Why was I getting excited to see him every day, feeling a rush when he entered the room? Why did I catch myself thinking about him even after hours, wondering if he'd text or drop me a line about work? I told myself it was innocent. I wasn't doing anything I hadn't done before, laughing with colleagues, engaging in friendly banter. Yet, there was something about Jake that I couldn't ignore. It was a spark, a small flicker of attraction that made me feel guilty, but also exhilarated. The rational part of me told me to step back, to be careful, to remember who I was. But the temptation, the pull of something new, something forbidden, was already there. I kept telling myself that it would pass, that it was just a phase, something that happened when you spent too much time with someone. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I was changing, even if I didn't want to admit it. The longer I spent around Jake, the more I began to question everything I thought I knew about myself. Was I really the person I wanted to be? Was I as immune to temptation as I had always convinced myself? I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to face the truth of what was happening. But I could feel it. It was starting to take root, to burrow deep inside me. I had always believed I was strong, that I could resist anything that threatened what I had with Sarah. But as I found myself laughing a little too much around Jake, lingering in our conversations a little longer than I should have, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a line. The first time I truly noticed it was when Jake invited me to coffee after work. It seemed harmless enough, just a casual invitation, right? We had been working late, and it was a way to unwind before heading home. I told myself it would be no different than grabbing a drink with any other colleague. But the way he looked at me when he asked, the way he leaned slightly forward, I couldn't deny it anymore. There was something there. He was flirting, in a way that was just subtle enough for me to question whether I was imagining it. I hesitated. I knew I should have declined. I had a partner at home who loved me. But there was something in Jake's eyes, a spark that made me curious, something I hadn't felt in a while. I hadn't been out with anyone other than Sarah for a long time. It wasn't like I was unhappy, but there was an excitement in the air with Jake, an energy that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in months. I rationalized it. Just coffee, nothing more. Sarah wouldn't mind. It wasn't a date, after all. It was just two people getting to know each other better outside the office. We could talk shop, maybe share a laugh. I needed to stop overthinking it. But as the day went on, I kept thinking about the invitation. I wondered if he liked me, if he was hoping for something more, and what that might feel like. It was an innocent thought, or so I told myself. When we sat down at the cafe, there was an awkwardness at first. We both didn't know quite what to say beyond the usual work-related talk. But then slowly I told myself I wasn't going to let it happen. I had my doubts, my guilt, but I pushed them aside, convincing myself that I was still in control. That evening, Jake invited me to dinner. Just the two of us, he had said casually. We've worked so much lately. It'd be nice to get out and relax. It wasn't the first time he'd suggested it, but this time, something about it felt different. There was a sense of urgency in his tone, a glimmer of expectation in his eyes. I could feel the pressure building inside me. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to cross that line. But as much as I tried to convince myself to say no, something inside me longed to say yes. I knew I had no good reason to refuse. Sarah wouldn't care if I went out with a colleague, right? After all, it wasn't anything more than dinner. It wasn't like I was cheating. It was just two people sharing a meal, talking about life, maybe a little flirting here and there. Nothing wrong with that. But even as I told myself this, the nagging feeling that something was off gnawed at me. I ignored it. Dinner came, and as soon as we sat down, the tension was undeniable. Jake's hand brushed mine when he reached for his wine glass, and I felt the heat from his touch shoot through me. For a moment, I hesitated. Should I pull away? Should I make it clear that this was just a friendly meal, nothing more? But the pull of his presence, the quiet intensity in his gaze, made it hard to focus on anything but him. We started talking about work, the usual stuff, boring, predictable, but it didn't take long for the conversation to shift. He asked about my personal life, about how I was really feeling. I realized I hadn't talked to anyone about the stress I'd been under lately, the weight of balancing work and my relationship. With Sarah, everything was good, but I felt disconnected. Maybe it was just the routine. Maybe it was me. Either way, I felt like something was missing. Jake listened intently. He leaned in, his body language open and inviting, and for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. Not just as a colleague, but as a person, someone worth listening to. It was intoxicating. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone, not even Sarah. I talked about my fears, about how I felt trapped in a cycle of predictability. It was stupid, I knew it. I didn't mean to spill my heart out to him, but I did. And he didn't judge me. Instead, he offered comfort, his words gentle, almost like a balm to a wound I hadn't even realized was there. That's when I felt it. The shift. The undeniable attraction between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional. It was deeper, more dangerous. I was beginning to care about Jake in a way I hadn't expected. There was an intensity in his eyes that made my heart race, a rawness that mirrored something I had buried inside myself. It was all too easy to fall into this. Too easy to let go of the guilt, to let myself feel wanted in a way that was foreign to me. After dinner, we walked out of the restaurant together. I could feel the electricity in the air, a tension I couldn't ignore. I knew I should walk away, say goodbye, and go home to Sarah. But as Jake looked at me, I saw something in his eyes that made it hard to breathe. It was the same thing I had seen before, the pull, the invitation, the silent question. What if? We stood there in the parking lot, my car only a few feet away. I told myself to just get in, go home, end the night. But Jake took a step closer, and before I could stop myself, I found myself leaning in. His lips brushed against mine, soft and hesitant at first, but the moment it happened, I couldn't pull away. The kiss wasn't urgent, but it was full of promise, full of things we hadn't said but both knew were there. It was everything I had been fighting against, the temptation, the guilt, the desire. And in that moment, all of it faded away. There was only the kiss, and the feeling that I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. As we pulled apart, I felt a rush of emotions, guilt, excitement, shame, and, for the first time in what felt like forever, something new. I didn't know what it meant, what would happen next, but I knew I had made a choice. A choice I couldn't take back. I had crossed the line, and now there was no going back. I walked to my car, my hands trembling, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't ignore what had just happened, but I also knew that there was no way I could face Sarah now. How could I explain what I had done? How could I look her in the eyes and pretend everything was fine? The truth was, I didn't know. But one thing was clear. Everything had changed. The guilt was already settling in, but the thrill, the danger, was still there, lingering. The days after it happened were a blur. I went through the motions, pretending everything was normal, but I couldn't shake the weight of what I had done. Every time I saw Sarah, I felt a hollow ache deep in my chest. Her smile, the way she touched my arm, the little moments that had once been so comforting now felt like reminders of my betrayal. It wasn't that I didn't love her, I did. But everything had changed. The guilt I felt was crushing, and yet there was still this pull to Jake, this constant ache for something I had crossed a line to experience. The truth was, I didn't know how to live with what I had done. I couldn't undo it, and every time I looked at Sarah, I saw her as someone who deserved better than this. She had always been so trusting, so sure of us. She didn't deserve the lies I was now telling her. But I wasn't ready to tell her the truth. The shame felt too big to admit, and I didn't know how to take it back. I had crossed a line I had promised never to cross, and now I was stuck with the consequences of that decision. It wasn't long before things started to unravel. The guilt was eating at me. I would lie next to Sarah at night, pretending to sleep, while my mind raced. I thought about Jake, about how easy it had been to fall into this. I kept wondering if I was a terrible person, or if everyone who cheated felt this way. Would I always feel like I was lying to the one person who had trusted me the most? I couldn't even look her in the eye without feeling the weight of my actions. The inevitable happened one evening. Sarah confronted me. She had found a message on my phone. She didn't need to say much, because the look on her face said it all. I had never seen her so hurt, so betrayed. I couldn't find the words to explain myself. She had always been the one I trusted, the one I shared everything with. And now I had destroyed that. I couldn't apologize enough, couldn't explain away the guilt that was suffocating me. She didn't scream, didn't even cry right away. Instead, she asked me the questions I couldn't answer.
Why?
Why had I done it? Was I unhappy with her? Was I lying to her all this time? And what hurt the most was that I didn't have a good answer. I couldn't give her any reason that would justify what I had done. There was no excuse, no reason,